The Bandkanon 1 was one of the most revolutionary self-propelled guns, shortly SPG, of its time. Some of its features are still unique compared to its modern counterparts. This SPG, also known as 15.5 cm Bkan 1 or 155 mm Bandkanon L50, offered matchless firepower to the Swedish army over 35 years. Now, we are investigating the Bandkanon 1, the 155 mm autocannon on the tracks. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel before we start and give us a thumbs up if you like our video. To be notified of our new videos, please click the bell button. Also, you can now click the join button to support our channel. The Bandkanon 1 was one of the world's heaviest and most powerful SPG in its time. However, surprisingly, its innovative features did not attract other countries. Even Sweden produced only 26 pieces of them. Three main facts that shaped the Bandkanon 1 were Sweden's neutrality policy, geography, and small population. Yes, this country was neutral, but it was also pro-Western. Moscow was uncomfortable with the situation. It was likely that the USSR would attempt to invade Sweden in a possible Third World War to secure its Baltic front. Besides, NATO was a threat to some degree too. It might want to use Sweden's strategically important territory to attack the USSR's Baltic coasts. If Stockholm stayed neutral, in a moment of desperation that a possible Third World War might bring, NATO could attempt to invade this country. So, Sweden had to make great efforts to keep neutral during the First Cold War years. Thankfully, Stockholm had always given importance to its independent national defense industry, which eased to handle this challenge. Sweden also had a limited population for a large territory. The Swedish armed forces could not count on numerical superiority. But Sweden also had its own advantages. Thanks to its high-quality education system, this country had skillful conscripts and innovative engineers. By the 1950s, the Swedish army's artillery was outdated. Sweden would use its advantages to solve this problem. In those years, Sweden was working on the tank called Emil, but the program was terminated in 1954. So, AB Landswerk developed a new SPG called Artillery Kannonwagen 151, consisting of the Emil's hull and a turret with a 155 mm autocannon. The Swedish army did not choose it. Still, it had been highly impressed with the concept. So, AB Landswerk and Bofors began to develop a new SPG called Bandkanon 1 in the late 1950s. The first prototype was ready for trials in 1960. The Swedish army was pleased with the results of the extensive tests and gave the serial production order in 1965. The first production vehicle was completed 1 year later. Initially, Sweden had planned to have 70 SPGs. However, only 27 Bandkanon 1s, including the prototype, were ever produced. The Bandkanon 1 was an SPG, not a self-propelled howitzer. A howitzer can fire the shell within both low and high barrel elevations, so it can act as a mortar. But the maximum elevation angle of the Bandkanon 1's barrel was smaller than 45 degrees. The Swedish army had covered its numerical disadvantage with technology. The Bandkanon 1 could send 14 rounds to target in 48 seconds, whereas the other Western 155 mm self-propelled artillery, such as M44 or M109, had a rate of fire of only 4 rounds per minute in the burst mode. It means the Swedish SPG offered the same firepower as 4 US self-propelled howitzers. Well, if it's all about the rate of fire, why didn't Sweden choose to develop a multi-barrel rocket launcher system, shortly MLRS? The answer is actually simple. The MLRS of that time were still primitive compared to today. For example, the latest 122 mm BM-21 of the USSR, introduced in 1963, had a range of only just over 20 kilometers. The Bandkanon 1 could send a 155 mm projectile, which contained more explosives, to 25.6 kilometers. Also, in those years, flight characteristics of the artillery shells were still better than the artillery rockets, which improved the accuracy. The Swedish army deployed the Bandkanon 1s to the northern region, where the possible full-scale land invasion was expected. The USSR could invade Sweden by amphibious assault or airborne operation in the other areas. The towed artillery was enough to encounter such threats. The crew of the Bandkanon 1 was 5 persons. The SPG was 11 meters long, 3.37 meters wide, and 3.25 meters high. The combat weight was 52 tons. The Bandkanon 1 had one 240 brake horsepower Rolls-Royce K60 multi-fuel engine and one 300 shaft horsepower Boeing Model 502-10MA gas turbine. Its maximum road speed was 28 km per hour. The range of the vehicle was 230 km. The Bandkanon 1 could negotiate 0.95 meter vertical steps, 2 meter trenches, and ford to a depth of 1 meter. The range of the 155mm 50 caliber gun was 25,600 meters. The rate of fire was 14 rounds per 48 seconds. The elevation of the gun was between -3 to +40 degrees. The barrel could be traversed 15 degrees on both sides. The Bandkanon 1 carried 14 ammunitions. The hull and the turret of the Bandkanon 1 were made of all-welded steel. The thickness of the hull was between 10 to 15 millimeters, while the thickness of the turret was 20 millimeters. The side of the magazine was 20 millimeters, covers 10 millimeters, and the bottom 15 millimeters. The Bandkanon 1 had no combat capability in the NBC environment. The Bandkanon 1 had many components of the STRV-103 tank, including the suspension, power pack, and transmission. But the hull was longer and had one extra road wheel. Like the STRV-103, the Bandkanon 1 also had a combined diesel and gas engine configuration similar to a warship. In a standard mission, the diesel engine was always used, whereas the gas turbine was engaged when driving off-road. Using the power pack of the 39.7-ton STRV-103 caused some shortcomings. The Bandkanon 1 was 52 tons, so the speed and range of the SPG were low. Still, the hydropneumatic suspensions provided good cross-country ability to the Bandkanon 1. The driver could lock the hydropneumatic suspensions in position during firing to provide a more stable platform. The 155mm gun had a pepper pot muzzle brake and a replaceable liner which weighed 1,340 kilograms. When the vehicle was on the move, a lock at the front of the hull held the barrel. The elevated mechanism was counterbalanced by a spring balancing gear mounted in the pivot of the cradle, and it was operated either manually or by an auxiliary electric motor. This electric motor limited the elevation depression angles between +2 to +38 degrees. However, the manual mechanism allowed between -3 to +40 degrees. When the barrel was in minus angles, the turret could be turned to right only 4 degrees. A magazine which contained 7 drop compartments holding 2 rounds each fed the gun. The rounds dropped from the magazine onto the loading tray, suspended the rollers beneath it. The run out of the gun and the movement of the loading tray cocked the springs. Then these springs operated the loading tray and the rammer. The first round was manually loaded, after which the loading was automatic. The gunner could select either single shots or fully automatic. This automatic feeding system increased the rate of fire. By the time the first round hit the target, the other 13 were in the air. So, a single Bandkanon 1 could cause a devastating effect on the enemy. But the automatic feeding system also interrupted sustained fire. For the second salvo, the Bandkanon 1 needed reloading. It was why the rate of fire of the SPG was 14 rounds in 48 seconds. In one instance, in which one shell was inside the gun while 14 others waited in the magazine, the Bandkanon 1 fired 15 rounds in 45 seconds. It was the official world record for a 155mm SPG, which has not been broken yet. Still, only 2 minutes was enough to reload another 14 rounds. When the ammunition ran out, the crew elevated the gun to +38 degrees and opened the 2 covers on top of the magazine. The integrated articulated ammunition haulier loaded with a new ammunition clip was loaded into the magazine. Then the crew closed the covers and the Bandkanon 1 became ready to fire again. So, the Bandkanon 1 could send 28 projectiles in about 3.5 minutes to target. However, the M109 could fire a maximum of 6 rounds at the same period. The integrated haulier offered another advantage. After Bandkanon 1 completed a full salvo, it could move toward another firing position that had previously left spare ammunition. This way, the SPG could continue its mission without the need for a resupply vehicle while avoiding counter-battery fires. Initially, Sweden had planned to use atomic rounds with the Bandkanon 1. In those years, the only available 155mm nuclear artillery shell was the US W-48. But Washington refused to provide these 0.072 kiloton rounds. Later, Sweden also considered developing a 155mm chemical munition for the Bandkanon, but abandoned this plan later. In 1988, Sweden modernized the Bandkanon 1s and replaced their 240 brake horsepower Rolls-Royce K60 multi-fuel engines with the 290 horsepower Detroit diesel 6V53T engines. Besides, the SPG had now a new automatic transmission developed and produced by Bofors Defense. This new power pack replacement had also been applied to the STRV-103s. The Swedish Army renamed the original production variant as Bandkanon 1A, while the modernized vehicles were designated as Bandkanon 1C. In 1993, the C models were also equipped with the modular azimuth positioning system and a new fire control system called HUYAR. Because of these changes, the combat weight of the Bandkanon 1C increased to 53 tons. Despite all these updates, the Bandkanon 1 was an outdated artillery system. It had too low of a range and speed. The more capable howitzer had already ended the era of field guns. The modern 155mm 52 caliber guns could reach a firing range of 40 kilometers. And Sweden was no longer under the threat of a possible Soviet invasion. Also, the Swedish Army had already begun to work on the self-propelled variant of the FH-77. This program would pave the way for the development of the Archer. So, Sweden retired the Bandkanon 1 in 2003. Yet, its retirement did not cause it to be erased from memories and hearts. This SPG, which holds an unbroken world record, is still beautiful and fascinating. The Bandkanon 1, a Swedish steel beast with a terrifying, fiery breath, will always be a beloved legend. Thanks for watching our video. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up if you liked our video. To be notified of our new videos, please click the bell button. Also, you can now click the join button to support our channel.